Security is the backbone of any nation's stability, from insurgency in the northeast to banditry in rural communities. The rise in urban crime, Nigeria continues to confront evolving threats. But the big question remains, are the security policies really working? Hello and welcome to Discuss. I am Samuel Odi. Today we examine security policies and national stability. What are we getting right and what are we not getting right? From counter-insurgents operation to police reforms and rise of community security models. Are these strategies delivering real safety for Nigerians? Let's quickly go back to memory lane and look at key security policies that are currently actively in Nigeria and the dates of this policy's introduction. National security and counter-insurgency policies. We saw that the national security strategy was introduced in 2014 and was later updated. A later updated version of this policy or strategy was updated in 2019. The focus for the introduction of national security strategy, one is the focus was for holistic national security, military, economy, and political. The approach basically was to combine intelligence, military action and governance reforms. Then we also saw other policies around counter-insurgency operation, which was centered around Boko Haram response. State of emergency was declared May 2013. Operation Lafia Dole was also launched in 2015. The strategy and what the main focus was heavy military deployment plus territory recovery, because during this time frame we saw the Boko Haram bandits taking key locations and communities, holding individuals hostage and also taking hostage of host communities. So this policy was introduced so as to help counter. And then what has the outcome been since this has been introduced? We saw tactical gains, but insurgencies still persist, which is a very big concern still. Operation Safe Corridor, we saw the radicalization program, which introduced in 2016, and the focus was for rehabilitation, integration of ex-combatants, and the significance was to shift from purely military to soft security approach. And then we further saw police reforms, policing reforms, which was centered around community policing initiative we introduced nationwide in the year 2020 post #EndSARS protest. The concept for this was police-community partnership for intelligence and trust building. We also saw a couple of weeks ago President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also bringing up the matter of community policing. We'll be having all of this conversation. And again, we saw that we saw another reform within the Nigerian police reform effort, which is a major form push. This came in from 2020 to 2023, and the focus was for accountability training, citizens trust and then challenge were formed, and the challenges that were faced were centralized policing limits, efficiency, stability, and journal presentation, community and hybrid security models as well. We saw regional security outfits. Just we saw in the southwest, we saw the Amokwetung, which was introduced in 2020 in the southwest of Nigeria, aimed at complementing federal policing debate, risks of fragmentation versus localized security efficiency. We saw first peace and security centers. We've seen a whole lot of initiatives being introduced, and also we've always known about the Vigilante Group of Nigeria, which was established in 1970 and was formalized in 1999. That was when they got legal backing. Then the role is for grassroots intelligence, crime control, support to police as well. We also saw Nigerian Security and the Civil Defense Corps, which was introduced and established in 1967 and got their legal backing in 2003. Their role is to protect infrastructure, support internal security as well. And again, we also saw Nigerian Hunters and Forest Security Service, which was expanded the role was expanded in 2010s to 2020s, and the focus was for security and for forest security and anti-banditry counter-insurgents support. So if you look at the trajectory now, for over 2 decades, we've seen initiatives being introduced by the federal government, and how has this now affected this current situation that we are facing in the country? Let's look at counter-insurgency quickly. Nigeria's response to insurgency has evolved from heavy military operations to a hybrid approach. While military campaigns have reclaimed territories, experts urge that long-term stability requires more than force, including the eradication and community engagement. We also saw police reforms, which includes the EndSARS protest, exposed deep cracks in Nigerian policing system. Community policing emerged as a solution, but questions remain about trust, funding, and implementation. Other models shows community security models across Nigeria. Local security outfit and vigilante groups are filling the gaps, but are they strengthening security or creating risks? Those are the major questions we'll be looking to unpack on today's edition of Discuss. So join me have this conversation. He is a policy consultant, Emmanuel Ozemena, who is well-centered and well-knowledgeable around Nigerian policies. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Discuss.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yes, so let's get right into it. Now, you are a policy consultant, you are an expert in this field. We've seen lots of policies ranging from national security strategy down to the vigilante that has been feasible for decades now, and we are still suffering this, and then we get to see the high level of insecurity almost on a monthly basis. Just last week we saw a whole lot of devastation happening in Maiduguri. We also saw alleged festival, and then a lot of persons have alleged that women are being raped. This was what we saw in Delta just last week still. So looking at all of these policies that has been introduced, walk us through what you think have these policies actually been living up to expectation?
Well, I think the key thing to say is security policies, security management, security processes, security architecture are a livable experience on a daily basis. It's not like it's beyond textbook.
Okay.
So what it means is that on a daily basis, you need to go back to, your security architecture. That's talking about the entire system. You need to go back and say, what security model did we agree to adopt? How far have we implemented it? What are the lessons we've learned? Can we pull back, do a reflection, and perhaps rejig the entire system? Sometimes you might need to entirely bring in a new approach. Yeah. So, but the key thing is, are we able to do serious reflection on what we have had over time, and then say, how do we improve it? It's something you could say is an organic process for every country, whether it's United States, whether it's Britain, Netherlands, even Ghana, there on a daily basis. Yes. That's why it's something organic that you need to keep working on. For me, when people say, the system, the policies keep changing. Yeah, the policies need to be updated. The policies need to be retweaked. The policy needs to be strengthened because you have. Take for instance, in 1966, yes, Nigeria took a decision to unify policing.
Yes.
Because based on the 1916 and 1925 police ordinance, yes, on what they call native authority ordinance, yeah, where you had, the local policing, yes, under the traditional rulers. Yes. We operated it between 1914 up to 1966. Yes. And people said, look, this didn't create what would have helped, or were not helping, perhaps because of some interferences with the local chiefs and people who were supposed to steward the process. And then by the time the military took over, I think precisely General Johnson Thomas Umunakwe Aguiyi-Ironsi decided to do away with it and unified policing into one unit.
Yes.
That's
the better.
And then maybe the Police Act of 1966.
Yes.
That's why we ended with what we have today.
Yes.
But meanwhile, between 1966 and looking forward to today,
yes,
we are talking about over 60 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So we realized that look, we need to go back. Everyone is talking about let's decentralize policing.
Yes.
We're now talking about state police. So the thing is, the fundamental question to ask is, what was wrong?
Yes, I was getting to that because now we are seeing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu wanting to go back to that, because the conversation is still up in the Senate where they are looking to reintroduce community policing. So what was the problem earlier that led to unifying the police and now looking to
so the basic question to ask is,
yes,
other countries, what has been their experience? Okay, let's look at the United States.
Okay.
I think they provide a model Nigeria can copy for two reasons. United States is not a unitary system, it's a federation.
Yes.
And Nigeria, incidentally, adopted federalism.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we adopted it in 1936 or thereabout. So adopting federalism, but real federalism, I think, took off under Oliver Littington Constitution in 1951.
Yes.
So that 1950-51 Constitution ushered Nigeria into a full federalism.
Yes.
So the first question to ask, in the United States, you have FBI as the federal police.
Yes.
You have the state, for instance, state of New York. You have New York State Police. And then you now have New York City Police. So you have three levels of policing in the United States. The federal government, FBI, the state policing, and the city council.
Which has to cover the sheriffs and the rest of that.
Yes, yeah. So what achievement or lessons have they learned running that model?
Yes.
And then, are there things we can pick from there in our attempt towards going back to what was there
before now?
Before now,
yes,
that the military in 1966 took away,
yes,
and unified. Because one of the key arguments that even scholars talk about the military regime of General Aguiyi-Ironsi is that look, he unified the country.
Yes.
Because he felt perhaps that the country was so divided, and every attempt he made, but subsequently the administrations that came after him, even though they criticized him, have been unable to remodel that unitary system of government. Okay. Because take for instance, if you look at 1963 Constitution, in terms of resource allocation and resource management,
yes,
the regional government were the government that managed the resources. And that was in line with the federal principles. So the question to ask today is, what have we learned? I mean, now we are trying to bring back true federalism, yes, across all spectrum.
Yes.
So what do we need to do? What were the lessons that we learned in the past, beginning from 1914 to 1966, when we had a dual policing system, yes, that we can correct going forward? So that's one. Let's go back to the United States. In some of the states, for you to become the sheriff at the police, you need to run for an election. Yes. So the community needs to elect you to become the head of the police.
Your track record needs to be.
So in some other states, the mayor appoints.
Yes.
But a mayor in appointing would have to put into consideration several factors. I mean, he may need to consult widely. At the moment, I mean, at the current system, I'm not sure such wide consultations are valuable.
Okay.
So are there things we need to learn in terms of providing safeguards?
Okay.
Because one of the arguments in the past is that the local chiefs,
yes,
especially in the north and in the southwest, in the western Nigeria,
yes,
where you had it, because in the eastern Nigeria it didn't happen, because that level of indirect rule,
yes,
was not very, didn't take root. You had what they call warrant chiefs. Yeah, but they had big problem getting a handle over the administration because of the nature of the southeast. Okay. So the question to ask is, what lessons did we learn? What I was thinking now that we are thinking about migrating back
to community policing.
Not community policing, to decentralizing policing. I think the right word is decentralization of policing. Because at the moment it's unified. You have the IG who sits in Abuja, and you now have state commands reporting to the Inspector General of Police who sits in Abuja, and then you now have the area commands, all kinds of different hierarchies. So what we are going to ask is, how do we go back, perhaps do a review of the history of dual policing before now, and then what has happened in terms of changes in the society, to know what we should do better so that we can have a more effective policing services. So what it simply means is that we have realized that, look, policing, security, intelligence is not cast in stone. That you need to keep working on it, you need to keep improving it, you need to keep collecting lessons learned to be able to have a better services.
Earlier on they argued funding was one of the challenges why they had to unify everything earlier on. But now, do you think there is a budget? Do you think Nigeria has a budget cap to be able to decentralize the policing system, based on the fact that all of the states always await allocation from the federal government to be able to run the affairs of the states? How do you think this would, affect in terms of budgeting and salary payments?
No, I think budget funding was not part of the reasons. The key reasons were more or less political. Social and political. They are saying the chiefs, because it's called Native Authority Police Ordinance. So the chiefs who were in control on behalf of the British government were not able to be accountable. I mean, the chiefs, all they did was, whoever they had issues with can become a victim. Because the prisons and the police were under that type of arrangement. In fact, if you visit most communities in the north, for instance, I've been to, I think, a local government area in Kano. So what you're going to have, wherever the Sarakin's house is, the police post will be very close to Sarakin's house, as well as the prison. So that's you have that level of structure.
So that means we saw abuse of power.
So there was allegation of abuse of power. So in going forward, what can we do? One of the things, if you ask me, we can do as we think through the road to decentralization should be, one, put in place independent processes, for appointment of who heads the state police command. The head of the state police. For instance, you already have an Amatiku in the southwest, but if you look at the structure of the Amatiku, it's still the governor who appoints. So I'm asking, what's the difference between the president of Nigeria appointing the IG, who in turn, but through in collaboration with the Police Service Commission, does that appointment, and the governor appointing? So if we are thinking about going back, in order to avoid abuse that we had suffered in the past, one of the things we may need to do could be, set up independent processes for the leadership to emerge, and independent processes that should be able to ensure recruitment is fair, balanced, and inclusive at the state level and at the community level. If we create an inclusive process that is open, transparent, and can be observed by community members and citizens at every state, and then create accountability framework for discipline and what have you. We would have a more effective policing as we do this transition. Because the argument has been, oh, the governors are going to abuse that right. I mean, come hard on their political opponent.
Yes.
But if you create an independent process, even if we would, in fact, I would suggest maybe we take some models you have in some of the states in the US where an election is done. So the community will know who is reputable, who has the adequate reputation and public image to become the head of the police in their community. If we get through that process, have an open process that is inclusive, I think there might be some level of successes.
Yeah, how do you let's talk about intelligence gathering now. How do you think it's going to be effective if this the policing in Nigeria gets decentralized? Do you think it's going to improve the level of intelligence gathering, and also how do you think that can impact positively in terms of joint task force, and also Nigerians believing and trusting in the system that the policing that's now, I'm not just segregating to the Nigerian police but military and other security agencies. How do you think this would make Nigerians believe in the system, that the security forces in Nigeria is fully awake to its responsibility?
I think the key thing to do is, if you have one security network,
yes,
or you could say security under one roof, you can call it a model of security under one roof. What it means is that, look, we might be different, we might belong to different security arms, but we have one objective. Because the key thing is, what objective do we have? To secure our country, to secure our states, to secure our communities, to secure households. So if we have this as key objective, what it simply means is that there should be information sharing at every level. Take, for instance, in the US, as we speak now, the FBI would not come into a matter if they think the New York or Nevada State Police will be able to manage it.
Yes.
They won't bother. So all they do is, when they think that matter is beyond, or laws are classified. There are state laws as well as federal laws. Yes. So what's to do is that, what crime did the individual commit? Take, for instance, in Sharia states in Nigeria,
yes, where
you have the Sharia police. And they know when a crime is classified under the Sharia, and it's them that would come in there and take the person to the Sharia court. So that's how laws are classified. Right. Is it a state law? Is it a county or local government bylaws that the individual violated? Is it a federal law that the individual violated? So that now becomes a guide. But in terms of overall management of intelligence and securing the country,
yes,
what will happen is that there will be information sharing or interagency cooperation. I mean, and that's how you get the job done. Because at every point in time, every agency that is within the security hub, yes, knows they have a responsibility. Take, for instance, you have civil defense, you have Nigerian Police Force, that is the coordinating arm, that's the lead arm in internal security in Nigeria. Yes. You have civil defense, you have immigration, you have customs, you have the intelligence agencies, Department of State Security Services, military intelligence, you have the armed forces who also play a role. Their role is defense of the integrity of Nigeria. Yes. But in the last 16 years, we have seen that they also play a role within the internal security. But the internal security, no doubt, is still being led by the police. Yeah. So if this interagency cooperation had gone on, yes, I mean, all we need to do is to remodel it now between the state agencies and the federal agencies, as well as the local government and community agencies. That's simply what we need to do.
Okay, let's look at it from this other standpoint, Emmanuel. We've seen how well they have been performing. That's talking about this unified policing system that we have in Nigeria. Now, when they get decentralized, do you think it's going to, hamper or lessen their effectiveness? And do you think it's, in a nutshell, do you think it's going to weaken the system or it's going to strengthen them the more?
I'm not sure. In my view, it will not weaken the system.
Okay.
First is that you have a population. Let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. In 1960, at independence,
yes,
Nigeria was about barely 50 million people. Mm-hmm. And today we are talking about 43 million people.
Yes.
So you've grown. And if you take if you look at the data of the resources, even within the security system,
yes,
police, I'm not sure they're up to 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Civil defense is less than 300,000.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about the intelligence agencies, they are lesser, yes, in number. The military, navy, the army, the air force, what is the number? So if we aggregate that number, mm-hmm, and then do some sort of ratio analysis. So what is the ratio of the number of police and other security agencies to a citizen?
Okay.
So if you look at it, it's way low. So what we're simply doing, I'm not sure anybody will lose his job, okay, in this system. Okay. But what we're doing is, look, we have 99,000 communities in Nigeria. That's the data.
Yes.
99,000 communities. And you have 774 local government areas in Nigeria. Yes. And you have almost 950 something thousand square miles in terms of size. So what to do is, currently what we have is inadequate. So what we're simply doing is, look, for purposes of effectiveness, for purposes of strengthening, yes, the security system, for purposes of exploring local resources, yes, because one of the most effective security you can get anywhere, even including intelligence, it's to get it from the locals. People who live within the community, they know everybody, they know when Mr. A is born, they know when Mr. B is born, they know which school they are attending. So at that point in time, yes, you're actually going to have more effective policing, yes, to such a manner that you can get granulate information, okay, or intelligence at that level. If you watch, for instance, we have even practiced this decentralization for several decades. Yes. We are talking of, in most communities now, you have vigilantes. Yes. What does those vigilantes do? Who are there? They provide security support within their communities. Yes. So what will simply happen is to look at it and say, look, we need to formalize or have formal structures. Yes. Because you're not formalizing the vigilante, but you're having formal structures in terms of policing, in terms of intelligence gathering, yes, in terms of trying to deepen or strengthen the security system, yes, in the country. Yes. That's simply what you're doing. But in this case, the model is changing, or the proposed model would alter what currently exists, where, for instance, in section 30 of the Constitution, yes, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. Yes. So the security is on the shoulders, yes, of the commander-in-chief. Yes. Now, in section 1817, where the Nigerian police force, yes, it's the only recognized agency, yes, to provide policing services in Nigeria based on the law of, I think, of 1966 or 68, yes, that unified the policing in Nigeria. Yes. So amendment of that section, particularly on policing, because when we are talking about decentralizing policing, it's not decentralizing armed forces. Okay. That's not, because every country in the world, one of the things that makes them a country, is a unified army. Yes. Even though in the US, they have national guards for different states.
Yes, submarines.
Yeah, but again, the President of the United States remains the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States Army. So also in Nigeria. So what will happen, in my view, simply is, look, go back. The first thing we need to do is data collection. Ask ourselves, what is the data, like the data we have looked at on the size of Nigeria, the growing population, what would the needs be like? I'm sure every state governor who sits in the government house knows the security needs of his people. But at the moment, the way the situation is, based on the 1999 Constitution, until it's amended, there's not much the governor could do. Even though you call him Chief Security Officer of the state, but he does not control anything in terms of real policing. Yeah. So this would, like, perhaps enable them have clear, or whoever is the governor, have a clear handle that he can manage.
Okay, before we get into national stability quickly, but let's look at funding. Also, funding can over and again be a serious concern for the policing force in the system. So, does this mean if the amendment does happen in the 1999 Constitution and the policing system gets decentralized, does it mean that states would have to generate their own funding, salaries, welfare for the tiers, whichever way the federal government will want to do it, whichever way the amendment of the Constitution will go? Does it mean that the state government would need to, take charge of the salaries and welfare of these officers in this particular state? Because we all know that allocations from the federal government is what most states, most governors use. Should the people go back and inquire from the state governors if they can be able to handle this first? Should there be a sum of a town hall meeting for this, because security is everybody's business? Do you think there should be a town hall meeting for this first, so as to have these conversations around how revenues will be generated? Because obviously, from what they say here, bail is free. The police force does not, generate income for themselves. So how can this concern now be taken care of? Because these officers will obviously have families to take care of. The ones that don't have families will be looking forward to having their own families. So what ways can the monetary aspects be taken care of?
No, I think the clear thing is that the Nigerian police force, as it is, the model I'm imagining, nothing happens to it. It's there because it still performs a function. But what we are simply doing is, take for instance in Southwest, where you could say this has been modeled. This model has been tried, where you have the Amatekun in play. So those Amatekun, are they paid or not? They are headed. They have a hierarchy of leadership. Are there laws setting them up? There are laws by each of the states houses of assembly. So where do the governors get the money from?
Or do they generate their own funds?
No, security agencies don't generate money. You're providing services to secure the community. So it's not a question of generating funds, but rather a question of discharging your responsibilities. So perhaps what we will do is to ask one of the governors in the Southwest and say, because I think the immediate past governor of Ondo State, the late governor was one of the pioneers. Essentially, he had a background in law, so it gave him some level of he has a knack for setting up such processes. And within a few, you saw how Amatekun came in place.
It wasn't so much of a subject of a debate per se, because
every state in Nigeria has got manpower, resources. If they propose to set up a state police, when the law is amended, that is expected there will be an amendment to the Constitution. Because the president said, look, I want to leave this as part of my policing reforms.
Yes.
And even the management of the Nigerian police, the new IG, has gone ahead to set up a committee, around this issue.
Yes.
Yeah. So the key thing is doable.
Yes.
Because it's been done before.
Okay.
We did it for several years.
Yes.
And it worked. But it's just that during the military interregnum of Aguirre, he felt otherwise, that the country was so divided, and decided to unify virtually everything. And here we are today. So in terms of the practicalities there, it can be done because it's been done before.
Yes.
The governors of Southwest. Ondo, Oyo, Ekiti, I think it's only Lagos that hasn't done, that has no Amatiku.
It's just last month.
Yeah. Last one is a traffic police. But what we are saying, if Lagos have done it, we are no longer talking about New York.
Yes.
We are no longer talking about Nevada.
Nevada, yeah, true.
Yeah, so it can be done.
Yes.
Yeah, but all we need to do is, as the debate emerges, in the constitution there should be a clear guidelines, minimum guidelines on the setup. Yeah. And that guideline, so long as it's in the constitution, the governors will abide by that guideline. Yeah. Take for instance, if a state like Bayelsa, you have 8 local government areas. So your needs for policing will be determined by your number, by your size, and by the scale of challenges.
That basically it could help Nigeria, so even the country save more money.
No, you are not. What it simply means is that you have increased resources within manpower and what have you within the policing system.
Okay. All right. Let's go on a very quick break, and then when we return back, this conversation continues as we'll be looking at, the roles citizens have to play in terms of national security, and also how important it is for economic development in solving insecurity. Stay with us. We'll be right back shortly after this break. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Discuss here on Global Television, and I am Samuel Odi. We've been having conversations around state policing, security policies, how impactful they've been over the years. Now we're getting into the other part of the conversation, which is centered around national stability. You can have conversation around economic development and national stability without having a conversation around security, because when a system or when a state is well secured, it opens automatic doors of foreign direct investment and investors coming into the country to want to do business. So if insecurity persists, then there would be a whole lot of concerns in terms of an economy growing. So still having this conversation with me in the studio is Emmanuel Ozemena, who is a policy consultant. Emmanuel, before we went on the break, we were having conversations around this subject matter, but quickly, let's look at how we can marry economic development and having a peaceful society.
Well, I think it's like saying the chicken and the egg. The chicken and the egg question. So you could say you can have the egg. Is the egg that you hatch to give birth to the chicken? Yeah. So first, nobody in his right mind would want to invest in a high-risk environment. Except perhaps they are looking at other factors. Factors such as, high return on investment, short-term investment, perhaps look at get insurances and risk aversions, or the required risk protection. Go there, spend some time, take my money, and move. Yes. But when you're talking about sustainable development and investment, you're required to have some level of peace, some level of stability, some level of predictability.
Yes.
So that's what creates development. It's a huge driver for development.
Yes.
So what do we need to do? If you look at last week, there's a report on terrorism index,
yes.
Global Terrorism
Index
2025. They are now looking at what happened in 2025.
Yes.
Now, there's something very important. I went through that report. I think it's less than, I think it's about 76 page or thereabout report.
Yes.
In that report, there's an aspect that I saw. First, the position of Nigeria as fourth, the position of Sahel as the most terrorized place in the world, and some part of Nigeria, especially the states some part of northeast and northwest,
yes.
are classified as part of Sahel.
Yeah.
Sahel Arid region. And then you now have, there are a total of 8 core Sahel countries and then another 8 non-core Sahel countries.
Okay.
So there are a total of 17.
Yes.
And Sahel is a hotbed, if you may, of terrorism, of insecurity, of security challenges globally, based on that report. That report has 4 indicators: incidents, fatalities,
yes.
injuries, and hostages.
Okay.
So these factors: how many people died, how many people were kidnapped, and all that.
Yes.
So they have 20 worst incidences in 2025.
Yes.
2 of them incidentally happened in Nigeria. Number 10 on that list and number 12 in Borno State, Nigeria. One happened in May with, I think, about 63 casualties.
Yes.
And then the other one happened in September with 53 casualties. So that puts Nigeria on the spot. So what it simply means, an investor who is thinking of investing in long term,
yes.
is he likely going to be attracted to Nigeria?
Okay.
If he's attracted to Nigeria, what will he be coming to do? Because what it means is that if you have insecurity, cost of doing business goes high because of insurance, all kinds of whatever, other variables that will be involved.
Yes.
But if it's more peaceful, you are likely going to attract more investors,
yes.
in long-term investment.
Yes.
So what it means is that we need to perhaps go back.
Yes.
If I'm an advisor to the government, one of the things I'm going to do, get that report,
yes.
dissect it, and say, what lessons can we learn? Part of that report looks at 2 factors driving terrorism. One of them is borderline. Borderline,
yes.
Now you're talking about communities, states,
yes.
on the international borders. So how does that impact it? Like Niger has a very high incidence. Niger shares border with Kebbi, Sokoto, Kano, Jigawa, Katsina, and Yobe. So on that axis, you have this influence. Terror agents would commit a crime in Niger, they would come over to Nigeria. I mean, under Donald Trump's first tenure, we had a situation where somebody was kidnapped in Niger and they brought him to, I think, either Kebbi or Sokoto in Nigeria. That necessitated the US military to come for a rescue in Nigeria. So communities on the border are usually exposed. Now, even the current activities of terrorists within Niger State and Kwara State are also linked, especially in Kwara, where you have Barutin, Kayama, and Borgu. So along that axis, Borgu is in Niger State on the other side, while Baritin Kayama is in Kwara State.
Yes.
So borderline is big issue.
Okay.
Then again, there's also issue around youth radicalization. Young people, because they've got energy,
yes,
are likely going to be recruited. Sometimes the price they are unable to resist it. So what are we doing about creating livelihood, sustainable livelihood for young people, especially young people who live on the border? Do we have a clear policy on livelihood creation, even for young people who are in the hinterlands? Because if you have an engaged young people, yes, who wake up every day, they are heading to their job, they are less likely going to fall into the trap of terrorism.
Yes.
So it's quite a very robust report, which I think should be able to inform policymakers in Nigeria. I hope they take it and then tease out the lessons, there, and then let's see how we can be able to, keep improving the security models, security processes, and practices within Nigeria.
Okay, quickly as we're getting set to wrap up, let's look at the roles that citizens need to play in terms of aiding national security. What roles do you think citizens need to play? Because security starts from self before escalating to whichever decentralization that the president is looking into, or the state CID or regional area command. What role do you think Nigerian citizens need to play in helping to, preserve and also protect themselves?
I think there's no doubt everyone who is a citizen of a country has got a role to play at the community level, at the local government level, at the state level,
yes,
and at the federal level.
Yes.
In fact, we should drill it down to the households. Households where the father, the parents, each time they notice something, even about their children, they should be able to seek help.
Yes.
Maybe a child who is coming under the influence of the terror groups.
Okay.
You should be able to say, look, this is not the child I gave birth to.
Yes.
You should seek help. You get experts who will be able to dissect what is happening.
Okay.
So it should begin from the household.
Yes.
Graduate to village, community,
yes,
town, and all that.
Yes.
Because the most effective intelligence you can have should be an intelligence that is bottom to top. Because everything happens in the community, it happens in the household, it happens in the marketplace.
Yes.
So if we begin from there and cascade it up,
yes,
we will have a more secure environment. But at each point in time, there's also a need to win the trust of every actor within this space. Trust in such a way that when information are shared, it should be kept as information shared.
Yes.
And it should be non-disclosure in terms of disclosing the sources of such information. You should win the trust of the community. And if you win the trust of the community and provide adequate protection,
yes,
and I think it will be more inclusive and community driven.
Okay, quickly, before I let you go, last week we saw President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on a 2-day state visit to the United Kingdom. Walk us through how you feel that visit is going to impact the life of Nigerians.
Well, I think
from the agreement that was reached,
from what is available,
yes,
yeah, one of the key things is on redevelopment or improvement of the existing 2 ports in Lagos, the Apapa port and Tinkan.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see how it goes.
Yes.
But I'm really very interested in also opening up what I call the Eastern Ports. The Eastern Ports corridor beginning from Benin River down to Akwa Ibom. Yeah, you have At the moment, you have about 7 ports located in that location. 3 in Delta, 2 in Rivers, 1 in Akwa Ibom, 1 in Cross River.
Yes.
And even the immediate past governor of Cross River was talking about another one in Bakassi, what he called Bakassi. When he was doing that, when he had the dream of that the big road project.
Yes.
Yeah. And incidentally, the Eastern Maritime Corridor
yes,
begins from Benin River and terminates, that transportation route is supposed to terminate, if you have it effectively, the states in the northeast would have access to it easier, because the Western Maritime Corridor actually should service the from southwest all through north central, gets to northwest.
Okay.
Because that's the 2 transport corridors you have in Nigeria. Even rail corridors, you have eastern and you have western.
Yes.
Even in the naval division within the Nigerian Navy, you have Western Naval Command and Eastern Naval Command. So that's the maritime corridor of Nigeria.
Yes.
The 2 maritime corridors. So there should be an effort also to look at it, even if it's to get Chinese funded funds.
Are we not tired of getting funds from the Chinese?
Yes. So I think it's quite. Let's see how the redevelopment of the Apapa port and that of Tinkan goes.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Discuss. Emmanuel Ozemena, policy consultant.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Security is not just about guns and uniform. It's about trust, justice, and opportunities. As Nigeria continues to refine its policies, the path to national stability will depend not just on strategies but on executions that are basically from the policies and reforms that we keep seeing all the time in the Nigerian system. And this is how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Discuss. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you again as we discuss further. Bye for now.